But let's start then by previewing the game on Sunday. It's a huge match. It's one of the matches we always look forward to every single year, especially those in and around the city of Manchester, as the city is divided into red and blue once more. And actually, it's 5 years ago this month. Incredible this. I can't believe it's 5 years ago, but it's 5 years ago this month that Marcus Rashford became the youngest Manchester derby goal scorer in Premier League history, scoring the winner at the Etihad Stadium, aged just 18 years and 141 days. What a moment that was. Absolutely incredible. Andy, as if it's 5 years ago, by the way.
No, time flies, doesn't it? I'd like to say when you're having fun, but it hasn't been a funny 5 years for Manchester United. Not won a trophy for 5 years coming up. So I remember that clearly and buzzing off it. I think Marcus was the only Mancunian on the pitch. It was a great finish. He was a young lad. And part of me is quite sorry because Marcus's stock has fallen since then in terms of his performances. I'd love to see him back to a level where he was. I remember the day after that game, I got on a flight from Manchester to Barcelona, and as I walked through the front of the cabin, even though it was a budget airline, lots of Manchester City senior officials were on the plane because lots of them are Catalans who live in Barcelona, and I recognized them, and I don't know them, and I pretended to make a phone call and say, "No, we won, we did them 1-0. Yeah, a Mancunian scored it, brilliant. The whole city's buzzing." And I realize it's very, very immature of me to do that, but that's just me. I'm sorry, that's what I'm like. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure they were thinking, "What a knob," but I enjoyed it. And if it happens again, I'll do exactly the same thing. So watch out for it, Ferran Soriano.
Yeah, I'm sure he's listening. He's a big fan of our podcast, I'm sure. Laurie, yeah, his stock has fallen a little bit of late, but it's easy to forget, in a sense, really, just how incredible Rashford was at that point and how he was sort of doing things that no young Mancunian striker had done for Manchester United before.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love Andy's story there. It just brings back memories of Dom Jolly, with his massive, big, whatever mobile phone it was, annoying people. So Andy, yeah, I can totally picture the scene. But I think what you're talking about there actually is probably the enjoyment that you got from a guy like Marcus Rashford coming through the academy and scoring such a really good goal, a winning goal at the Etihad, showing no fear. I mean, he went through a ridiculous run, didn't he, of scoring on his debut in the Premier League, FA Cup, for England. It was ridiculous, wasn't it, this kind of run that he was on? And I mean, to be fair, he has delivered in sort of big moments, and it's perhaps not been as frequent as people would have liked. There were certainly moments, in that 2019-20 season where he kind of carried the team. And I actually watched that Manchester derby at the Etihad when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's job was pretty much on the line. He had that sort of back-to-back winning sequence against Tottenham and Man City. I watched that match with a guy called David Horrocks, who's Fletcher Moss's chairman, which is the boys' club that Marcus Rashford came through. So I went to his house, really lovely guy. And the match went perfectly for the piece because, Rashford was on fire. United played really well. And then at the end, Rashford's taking his shirt off, going into the crowd. I think Jesse Lingard was there as well, doing the same thing. And he played a little bit for Fletcher Moss when he was a young kid. And it was really lovely seeing this guy that had obviously first met Marcus when he was, 7, 8 years old. I think used to give Melanie, his mum, lifts sometimes to training. He used to help out a little bit. And he was just so kind of paternalistic, I suppose, in saying, "Oh, look, Marcus has got his shirt off," and how excited he was. And so I think that we have to hold on to that kind of picture because he is a Manchester lad. And if we can get a team where you've got just a few of those, golden nuggets in there, it kind of makes those stories, those moments all the more special because you feel a bit of a connection there. Hopefully I'm not getting too, so sort of romantic about this kind of thing, but I do think that's ultimately what football comes down to.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything better, no matter which team you support anywhere in the world, than a local lad who's followed the club from being really small, come through the academy, broken into the first team and made an impact. I just think there's nothing better than that. And whichever team you're at, whoever your youngster is, to see that and to witness that, that's one of us doing that effectively. And I think that's why it brings such romantic and such just brilliant feeling, really, isn't it? I don't really know any other way of summing it up. The flip side of that, Carl, I suppose, is that you celebrate those moments more because Marcus is a local lad, but then does he get more criticism when things are bad because he's a local lad? What do you think?
I think it's a tricky one. Obviously, I'll preface this with, I helped write his book. So,
Yeah.
Get out any conflict of interest there. I think when you look at this Manchester United team and you look at the 5 years of inconsistent, or maybe they're going to get serious and maybe not, and you look at the players who've been there for ages and have like really come up in the big moments, a lot of those big moments have Rashford in them. You talk about the PSG game, you talk about the games against City, you talk about big games in Europe. Rashford is there or thereabouts, and he has played a ridiculous amount of football in these 5 years. He's openly talked about how when he was growing up, he looked up to Cristiano Ronaldo and looked up to Wayne Rooney. There's the story about how he was there for when the Brazilian Ronaldo scored a hat-trick at Old Trafford in the Champions League. So, and he's got all that memory as well. And you can tell he gets properly fired up for the derby. He gets properly heated up when he wants to play against Liverpool. And his goal record against City is pretty good. He's played 14 times. He's got 4 goals and whatnot. And I think the interesting thing is, in terms of criticism, yeah, when it is that big game and he doesn't have a great game, you're almost expecting wait. But Rashford normally comes good at these games. We've seen him score against Liverpool. We've seen him score against PSG. We've seen him play with absolutely no fear against all of these big teams. And when he doesn't have that great moment, you almost feel stung by it. I remember, it was for England, but when he came up for that penalty against Italy, I remember very confidently going to Jack Pitt-Brooke, who covers Spurs, saying Rashford doesn't miss penalties. This is going in. And when when the penalty didn't go in, I pretty much collapsed like that scene out of Boondock Saints. So it does always surprise me when Rashford has one of those great opportunities in a big moment and he doesn't come off, because he's come through so many times when he probably shouldn't have. And you have those moments where you're like, oh, wait, you are human.
Has he recovered from that penalty?
Yeah. If the opportunity to take another penalty comes up again for Manchester United, I'm pretty confident in saying he's not going to shy away from that opportunity if it's offered to him.
He's proved his strength of character in that regard. There's no doubt about that. I mean, the thing about him, Laurie, I suppose this season, and I've just hesitated there before picking my words really, because it's not been straightforward for him, has it really? He's not had a great season so far for a number of reasons. Are we any closer to seeing him emerge from this period, Laurie? What do you think?
Really don't know, because there's still such flux, isn't there, at Manchester United, with Ralph Rangnick trying to pick the best team, and it seems that his mind changes. We saw Anthony Elanga come on against Atletico Madrid and make a real impact, so then he keeps his place against Watford, and that's kind of the debate, I suppose, for the Manchester derby, isn't it? You've got another academy player coming through who's kind of on that arc that Rashford was when he first emerged. So, what's the balance there with those two players? But I think because he has the positions kind of altered, it's sort of right or left. Although I suppose you kind of say, well, listen, if you're a forward, you should be able to sort of manipulate in different positions. You look at Man City, they play all over the place, don't they? Liverpool, it's more set. And I suppose the difference in Man City is that actually they've got a team full of players that know their roles. It's understanding. They've got coordination. Whereas at Man United, if you change your position, then it's perhaps not necessarily such an easy transition. I think we've seen, certainly in recent games against Watford, for example, he came off the bench and put a real shift in. You could see him running about, and that's probably one of the criticisms I think that we've seen this season. How can we see physically this desire, this love for the game that I think we first saw when he broke through? And I think you perhaps could also say on the flip side of that, it does get clouded in football. It's such a brutal industry, and you have managers that perhaps want different things from you. And there's been a lot of change at Manchester United. To get that consistency performance perhaps is quite difficult. But ultimately he does have to, look at himself. The only way he can get through this kind of dip that he's had is by reapplying himself and absolutely adhering to what Ralph Rangnick asked him to do, showing that determination and desire that got him into this position in the first place. But I think he's got that within him, hasn't he? You can see that he wants to still be the guy for Manchester United, and it's been such a season of kind of, disappointment all round, really, that I think he's kind of become a part of that problem rather than it being on him himself.
Yeah, sometimes from the outside, it feels like he wants to be that person too much, and he tries too hard to take games by the scruff of the neck and really sort of try to be the man for Manchester United.
If you look at Rashford, has a very obvious tell when he's trying to take the game by the scruff of the neck. So, we know he likes the knuckleball technique. He does it on free kicks or whatnot because he's, big fan of Ronaldo. And he often has a moment in around about the second half of games where he will try and cut inside on the left and just let fly a knuckleball shot. Sometimes it works, hits the woodwork or is on target, but a lot of the time it goes wide. But that genuinely seems to be his big sort of, I'm going to have a go. You can tell there maybe 2 or 3 times in a game. I think this happened against Atletico Madrid, where he sort of had a moment and it didn't quite work. And he sort of like got a bit frustrated, and you could see him sort of the cogs were turning his head, and he went, right, the next time I get the ball, I'm going to shoot, regardless of whether or not a passing opportunity is on. He gets the ball in the second half and then has a go with that knuckleball, and it wasn't from a great shooting position. I don't think that either goes in or everyone goes, why'd you shoot from there? He does that 2 or 3 times. There are times when it does go in, it's amazing. There was a little spell where I don't want to read into it too much, but he did it against Spurs when they had a former Manchester United manager in charge. So,
yes,
read
I
into
think
that.
Rashford stepped up that day. I remember that very well. Andy, would you start him against City?
Don't know. I think his stock's probably at its lowest point since he broke through to the first team. I'd love him to be a great player for Manchester United. I'll always remember Manchester City's manager, Pep Guardiola, telling somebody Marcus Rashford is the only player I would take from that club who I think could improve Manchester City. That's 3.5 years ago since he said that now. This season has not been a good one for him. He started it with an injury. He's played in 4 different positions. I'm not sure that can be easy for him. He's played on the left, he's played on the right, he's played as a centre forward, he's played as a second striker. I don't think his career trajectory has been as he would have hoped. He's 24 years old now. He looks frustrated to me and has done a lot of times. Again, it can't be easy playing under different managers. And I don't think he makes himself an automatic starter for the Derby game because he's not been playing well. I'd love him to do what Anthony Martial did in the Derby last year when he was totally out of favour and ended up being Manchester United's man of the match. Love it to come good for Marcus, but it's not been a good season for him. And when Ralph Rangnick is looking at the team, does he think this is Marcus who has produced those great moments, and that there has been a lot of them. And Carl's right to pick out one which often don't get talked about, but Granada away in the Europa League last year, his control was incredible. And I remember speaking to some people who've been on the bench after that game, and they just said he's got that in him. He can produce that moment, bang, control the ball. And top players can do that. I just don't think we're seeing it enough. If he
bear in mind, he scored that goal. I think he's in the midst of that really bad ankle injury.
Yeah,
the only time he could wear shoes was when he was wearing football boots. His ankle was that swollen. He's played a lot of football while injured for United because there was no other option. It's odd, right? This is the first time in Rashford's career where he actually can be sat down. Not just for, you need a rest for tactical reasons, which Solskjaer didn't really do, but also for personnel reasons. And I think that's a very interesting crossroads for any footballer in their career, not just Rashford. And it's how do you cope or get your spot back? Where Jadon Sancho is doing really well on the left hand side right now. He's one form player, and on the other flank, it's Anthony Elanga who is gonna do what Rangnick wants him to do.